welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so super excited for you to be joining us today for yet another extraordinary guest who has so graciously agreed to come on the show today. And today's guest is the very fabulous Sara Shams. Hello, Sara.
Hi, Michelle.
And I keep saying Sara like it's a Sarah instead of Sarah. How do you actually say your name, Sara?
Sara.
So I was getting it right. It's
Yes.
So funny, isn't it? It's like Michelle. I had somebody today say to me, how do you say Michelle? And I was like, oh, you can say Michelle or Michelle because it's only got the one L. People sometimes have this very, they're not too sure about how to say it. And thank you, Sara. I will keep programming that in as I say your name to myself. But for those of you that haven't had the wonderful pleasure of meeting Sara before, let me give you a little bit of an introduction. Not only is she this amazing pharmacist from background, but she has grown and developed over the years into being a leading disability advocate, a model and a speaker, and somebody that is very passionate about sharing her journey and the disability positive body imagery work with the world today. But that's enough from me about Sara. Sara, please share with others how you came to be doing what you're doing today.
First off, thank you so much, Michelle, for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. And thank you for the gracious introduction as well. So, a pharmacist by background, I was born with a disability known as tibial hemimelia. And growing up in the 90s, I'd never seen anybody like myself represented anywhere. And basically, that really impacted my self-esteem and self-worth. And well into my sort of early 30s, I was not happy within myself. And I worked within the internal ableism that I have and basically decided that I wanted to do something better for myself and ask the question of, why am I holding myself back? And what imagery am I sending to people like myself as well because I'm holding myself back? And as a result, I have been sharing my story of embracing my quirks and hopefully empowering others to do the same.
Wonderful. And isn't that so true, that the ableism, I love how you use that word and that that whole seeing the person and not the, outward, whatever that may be. And it's true in terms of, that reaction, whether it's skin color, height, male, female, we can be so programmed, can't we, in terms of how we react and have to relearn in a way how to react to people based on who they are and not what they might necessarily present as like the book cover. So Sara, with your unique take and your insights into what must be an incredibly strong journey, what would you then say does success mean to you? What does success mean to you now?
Firstly, I think success can be different at every stage of life. But for me right now, or one thing I think that is the same at every stage is doing something that makes me happy. That's one of the biggest things about being successful, and feeling content with who I am and the decisions that I'm making. Knowing what my purpose or purposes are, I think that's a very difficult one. And I think lastly, setting goals, working towards those goals, achieving it or not, but actually learning from the experiences. And I think for me, those points combined is what success is to me.
And isn't that so beautiful that your insights into success are just as varied and beautiful as the stories that you bring to your life and to your journey, from whatever it is that makes you happy to what makes you content, to knowing your purpose and then setting the goals, but not just setting them, but also the journey towards those goals. I think that those aspects are very true as well, like you were saying around how they can be true now and true 10 years ago and true in 10 years from now, because they're a wonderful mixed bag of ways of looking at success and things that I love it as well because your exterior can change, you know, where you're at in terms of your life progress and your business progress, etc. I mean, your life must look very different from when you were a pharmacist to doing the disability advocacy that you do today. What do you think, if anything, and I'm just curious, that may have flavoured or changed the way that you look at success?
So do you mean in reference to the advocacy or my professional pharmacy background?
Who you were as a person at those two different points in your life. It may be that it hasn't changed at all, or it may be that it's... Yeah.
Yep. So it's funny. I think it's a really great question because as a pharmacist or healthcare professional, success, you know, often looks like how you have helped a person. For me, how I've helped a patient, helped the customer at the pharmacy, what I am doing to improve the public health of people as a pharmacist, and as a disability advocate on the other end of the spectrum for me is similar, because what am I doing to help myself, my self-esteem, but also how am I empowering others to take control of their life and be proud of their disability. And another way that I'm trying to, like, using a two-pronged approach actually to combine both of them, because I'm currently studying a Master of Public Health because I want to do more in the policy and influence policy development. And so for me, using my healthcare professional and educational background, combining it with my lived experience of a disability, and I'm hoping to influence policy at a more, I guess, higher level to ensure that the steps and policies that we put in place will actually impact the people it's supposed to.
Again, I'm blown away. This is so beautiful, Sarah, because Sara, got it in program wrong in the brain now. Just call me Michele with 2 L's. That way you can get your own back at me. And it's because I'm blown away with this whole depth to the wonderful answers that you're giving, that, you know, when you were working in that pharmacy field, it was about helping others, and the success came from you know, the measuring in many ways that how much you had helped others through what you were doing there. But you can see this beautiful linkage as well to, as a disability advocate, that linkage to how much you and how well you were helping others in the same way. So much so that you're studying more in that field, and you've got that clear sense that it's about helping within the policy field. And I agree, helping in the policy area so that it builds those foundations for, you know, real solutions that help people in a very practical way.
Exactly.
So with this unique and amazing insights, and again, from a very different lens, I wouldn't even pretend to be able to place myself in somebody with a disability's shoes, even though I seem to have a disability with saying your name today. I don't want to trivialize things either. So I'm very interested in what sorts of suggestions or tips would you have for people to keep that positive mindset? I'm sure people have ups and downs in everyday life, but, you know, when you're perhaps living with something that's a bit more obvious and people are reacting to it, it may be a little bit harder to stay positive and stay positive focused. So what sort of suggestions and tips do you have for people?
For me, I think we've discussed a couple of the, I guess, suggestions for success already. And I think defining what success means to you is really important, because if you don't know what that looks like, you're not sure what you're working towards. And for me, two things, the biggest things were, you know, increasing representation of people with disability and then influencing policy. The next thing for me would be self-acceptance mindset. So knowing what I can and what I can't do. So developing a self-awareness. And I think for me, embracing my quirks, that was me knowing myself better. And I think the better you know yourself, the more you can achieve. And thirdly, I think goal setting is really huge. So setting goals, working towards them. So for me, I guess one of my biggest goals sort of in the last few years was doing the Bridge to Brisbane. which is a 5 to 10 kilometer fun run. And my goal was running as well. So I wanted to do run on blades, which I'd never had in my life before. And I got the blades thanks to a grant with Your Time Matters and Start Foundation. And that was an amazing, incredible achievement on my part. And the opportunity that was given to me was just mind-blowing. And
so just there, because I realized that perhaps you spoke, and I didn't want to intrude in some ways, but at the same time, the way that you technically described your disability, people may not have quite understood what it is. And so now when you're talking about blades, it might not quite make sense for people. So do you want to share briefly, because I know what you're talking about, but perhaps people watching may not have an understanding of what you're talking about.
Sure. So yes, so I am a bilateral above knee amputee, basically, and a full-time prosthetic legs user. So I have everyday walking legs, and I also have running legs because I can't run on my everyday legs. And I'd never run in my life because the running legs are actually quite expensive. So are my everyday legs, but thanks to the NDIS, I have them. But running legs were not covered on the NDIS. And I had set myself a goal of getting running legs. And I was lucky enough to have gotten the grant funding from Start Foundation and Your Time Matters, who I think actually you know. And yes, so I got the running legs from there, and the running legs wasn't just a matter of getting them, it was also learning to use them over 6 to 8 months and falling. I remember on my first session on the running legs or the blades, I fell over at least 6 times. So it was an incredible and is an incredible experience still, and very proud of myself for achieving that.
And well, you should be. I mean, myself included, I've never participated in a marathon. I have 2 full legs, but to decide that you are going to set a goal of getting specialised legs to actually be able to run with them, what an achievement! Even to do that, and then to relearn to walk within the prosthetics, because that would have been another. I'm not sure of the mechanics of it, but I'm sure it was using different muscles and moving in different ways and all of that.
You're absolutely right. They're completely different knee prosthetic joints. So it was basically like starting from zero again, but a very rewarding experience. And Karen Powell from Your Time Matters was where the funding came from as well, and Start Foundation.
Oh, wonderful. And yeah, Carol's an amazing woman and supports so many great things.
Yeah.
And I just think that, this is really incredible, this journey that you've gone on. And I really want to celebrate the mindset that it took to, we forget as adults what it's like learning to walk and learning to do many things like drive a car, etc., because we learnt quite a few years ago, some more than others, but we get into these kind of sleep patterns where we do things that we automatically do because we learnt how to do them quite a long time ago. But for yourself to learn how to walk in your first set of prosthetics, and then to learn how to run in your second set of prosthetics, what do you think, again, may have been some of the key things that kept you going? Because you would have had your good days and your bad days like everybody, but what kept you going when you fell over 6 times, and when you woke up and went, I just can't be asked today, but you knew you needed to train again and get the muscles used to the prosthetics? What sorts of things kept you going then?
2 things I think are a really big part of who I am is being resilient and being adaptive. And those 2 traits, I believe, also contribute to a successful mindset, because as a person with disability, unfortunately, a lot of the time, we do have to be resilient and adaptive because we do face many barriers on a daily basis. And, and the barriers can be physical, societal, environmental, or attitudinal. And, those days when I don't feel like getting out of bed, I sometimes take an extra 10 minutes in bed, because why not? If you need the 10 minutes, it's okay to take it. But I think having the mindset and having clear goals, you know, I fell over 6 times, but my goal was to do the bridge to Brisbane. And I am goal oriented, and I believe in working towards those goals. So for me, getting out of bed, putting my legs on, because I want to achieve those goals. And another thing that really does help me with, you know, succeeding with my goals and life achievements is making smaller goals to get to the bigger goal. So sometimes when your example of, you know, can't be asked or don't want to get out of bed, doing small things, you know, okay, I'm going to go and make myself a coffee. And that's my first achievement of the day. And sometimes doing smaller tasks that lead to the bigger task and really does work for me, and I find that helpful. And
I think that's a really fabulous point that you raised there about I call them micro steps or micro goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So breaking down what might be bigger steps or bigger goals into those smaller steps. And, you know, I can't even begin to imagine, not so much when you're there in the situation and you fall over 6 times and you get yourself up again and you keep going, but the next day going, oh, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. But that thought of, you know, am I going to fall over 7 times or am I going to fall over once? You know, knowing that it was still a challenging, and we all have them, challenging situation that you were working through, but the strength, and this is what I love how with what you're saying, it was the strength of the goal that you set, the bigger goal of going in that marathon. And I think it's key for people watching to hear that, about having that bigger goal, but then working through it in those smaller steps to get there.
Exactly. And because sometimes big goals can be overwhelming, and we need those little wins, and celebrating the little wins is just as important as celebrating your big success and wins in life.
So did you celebrate when you went and you didn't fall over in one of the sessions? Were you like, yes, I've got this now?
I did. I went and had dessert.
I thought you were going to say you let yourself sleep in 10 more minutes the next day.
No, I believe in quick rewards. So just
instant gratification.
That's right. But I think another thing that I would like to add to, you know, having a, you know, mindset for success is also not being afraid of failure. Because, you know, if I was afraid of falling again, or I was afraid to, you know, make a mistake on air or falling over on the runway when I'm modeling, I wouldn't actually face anything, and that would hold me back. So the failure, and, you know, I have fallen over and I got back up, but the failure allowed me to learn from my mistakes and grow for the next time that I'm going to be facing similar challenges. So those things are really, they keep me going.
And this is an interesting point, because as a model, you know, with everybody's eyes and the cameras all on you, probably it is a different kind of fear, but that fear of falling over with everybody's eyes and cameras on you is another very real fear. Even if you have 2 legs, no legs, whatever legs, you know, people, you know, there's an expression about how people would rather die than get up and public speak. So to get up and deliberately have everybody looking at you as a physical but a physical item that people are looking at, because they're looking at your clothes, or you're walking, or your whatever you're doing, is a completely different kind of challenge again. And so have you fallen over while you've been on the catwalk and had to pick yourself up and go, I can do this, and keep going?
Thankfully not yet, touch wood. Actually, funny story, I was at my very first model casting last year, and, you know, I was very nervous, waiting around with other tall, beautiful, able-bodied model. I was the only model with disability there. And I remember overhearing a conversation between these other models saying, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. Wouldn't it be so funny if I fell over? And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, me being on 2 prosthetic legs have, 80% more chance of falling over than anybody else here. But you know what? I went, I did it, and I was selected. And it was just an incredible experience.
Wow, I can really only imagine. But isn't it incredible that, whatever your ability, disability, or whatever, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, but whatever physical state you may be, everybody still actually has that fear of walking out on stage and falling over. And it's quite interesting. I love that commonality, if you like, of being human that we have, that we all seem to have these similar fears of being terrified and having everybody watch us when we fall over. But you're so right. If you look at like the Oscars and different events, sometimes because of the beautiful clothes that people are wearing, they do step on the dress and fall over, or fall over on a step or something. And so these things do happen, but we seem to have this very strong fear of it happening to us. So if you were to look back on such an incredible wealth of opportunities and experiences that you have had to be a role model in many ways, what do you think would be some of the things, especially around the body positivity? I'm looking the best for me, I'm looking great for me, and that's all I can compare myself with, as opposed to the tall blonde models or whoever. What sorts of self-talk or habits do you have around that help you to get through? Again, everybody has them. If you're tall and blonde and beautiful, you're still going to look at somebody else and think they're more beautiful and they're taller and they're whatever, because there's always that comparison in our minds.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult one to definitely define and answer, because the definition of beauty is, different for everyone. But I think one big thing is that it's okay to be different. And, body positivity doesn't always have to be about the way you look. It's also about the way you feel. And for me, it's more body acceptance, because it's what my body can do and what it enables me to do. And I know my limitations, but I can also challenge them safely. And I think knowing that my disability is nothing to be ashamed of is really big. And knowing that, if I was talking to my younger self, telling myself that I should be proud of my disability and embracing my quirks, because one day I will be using these skills and hopefully empowering others to do the same.
And I love how you describe it. I love especially when you talk about embracing yourself and embracing your uniqueness or quirkiness. What sorts of things did you do to kind of move into that self-acceptance about you in whatever way that you were presenting in the world is fabulous and it's fine and it's okay, and you didn't need to try and be in this other mode or this other mode, or even dare I say it, in the mode of a disability advocate, having that mode and you can only do this and say this because you're in that field or whatever. So how did you really learn to embrace and start to embrace who you are and who your quirkiness is?
Yeah, that actually goes back to what I think one of the first things I mentioned about the internalized ableism, because for me, or just in general, I think society looks at people with disability oftentimes in 2 different ways. One, we are, object of pity or object of inspiration. And I think that we are neither of those 2 things. Like everyday amputees, such as myself, I call myself a garden variety amputee. I wanted to show and break those misconceptions of, I'm either here to be pitied or here to be inspired by for able-bodied people. And I wanted to change the way people see myself and the skills that I have. It's not just to do with my disability, it's also my abilities to set and achieve goals and work towards them and be resilient and adaptive. And one of the big reasons that I decided to get into this space is I didn't want children or adults growing up thinking that they weren't good enough. You know, there's that saying of you can't be what you can't see. And for me, I wanted to be, I do want to be a leader in not just a disability space, but in more leadership roles, because I believe I want other kids growing up to know that they can achieve these things as well.
I think that again is so inspirational and so wonderful to hear. You know, the you put it so beautifully. You know, not being somebody that's pitied and not somebody that's being seen as inspiration, but just being someone that's seen as Sara and having people see you as Sara, as a leader, as a woman, as a model, as a this, as a that, as the things that you want to place out in the world and not necessarily the labels that the world may put on you. And in fact, as you were talking, it reminded me of Adam Hill. And it took me ages to work out what they were talking about when they talked about he had a disability or he had something. And even The Last Leg, his program in the UK at the moment, it took me quite a while before I had to really pay attention for a while to find out what it was that they were talking about, because I didn't know that he didn't have a foot. And he was just this funny comedian. And I think that point that you so beautifully make around seeing the person and their skills and their abilities and seeing Sara and Sarah, seeing Sara as a leader and a keynote speaker and a this and a that, as well as representing other things, not you know, kind of those other things, and then she's a leader, blah blah. I think is very true, and good on you for going into that modeling world where, you know, like the public speaking world, everybody thinks they're going to fall over.
Yes.
But all of those other worlds and other angles of life that you go into to really represent, you know, the ableism that you have internalized. And I think you're such an inspiration, as well as being Sara, as well as being a leader, and as well as being all of the other beautiful and wonderful things that you represent.
Thank you, Michele.
So if people watching now did want to get hold of you, then what's the best way to actually reach out and connect with you?
It'd most likely be through my Instagram page. My Instagram handle is No Legs, No Worries, which is a nod to my bullies in high school, actually, who used to call me No Legs Sara, which, you know, thinking back, is very original of them. So yes, that's probably the best way to follow along on my adventures and advocacy journey. And yeah.
Wonderful. I really love that sense of humor around it. No legs. If children can be so very, very cruel, but yeah, I really love that. And yes, please follow Sara on Instagram to connect with her and keep up with her incredible. And I think that as your leadership journey, the way that you are leading and helping people to change their perceptions of what ableism and what that means. Now, our final question, and this you did touch on it earlier about the advice that you might give to your younger self. But Sara, is there any final words of advice that you might give to your younger self?
I think I've mentioned it all probably at this point, but I think knowing that, you know, we're not alone, or you are not alone, and believing in my abilities, and just, you don't know what you are capable of achieving until you give it a shot. What
a beautiful, beautiful way to finish up on. You know, you don't know what you're capable of achieving, whoever you are, and whatever life has served you up in this lifetime. You don't know what you're capable of achieving until you've given it a shot. And such beautiful words. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a real blast. And to everybody watching, thank you as well for tuning in to another show where we've had yet another incredible expert come on and share her stories and her background and her insights into creating a positive mindset set for success. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.